Alrighty, let me see if I can get this slideshow working. Just give me a second. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm having some technical difficulties.
I think it's maybe under display settings there, Aaron. I think that's how we
Yeah,
got it earlier.
yeah. Um,
There we go.
Alrighty. Can everyone see that? Is it, you don't see the notes, right?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Here at the Washington State Department of Commerce, we are giving a presentation and overview of the emissions performance standard rulemaking. My name is Aaron Tam. I'm an electric and natural gas data specialist, and I'm joined by Austin and Glenn. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. My name's Austin Scharf. I'm a senior energy policy specialist working with Aaron on this project and what ways I can support him. And we're very much looking forward to walking through an overview of our emissions performance standard today. Glenn, would you like to give some opening remarks?
Thank you. I'm Glenn Blackman, Director of the Energy Policy Office at the Department of Commerce. And I wanted to thank all of you for coming to this opening event for our rulemaking. This is really sort of a pre-rulemaking meeting that we scheduled to help everyone kind of get a sense of what this particular rule is about and what we need to do under the statute in order to do the update that's required every 5 years. The Department of Commerce role in the emissions performance standard is really quite limited in terms of setting the maximum emissions rate that a new baseload power plant or a new contract for a power plant has to meet in order for a Washington utility to invest or contract in that power. So there are other agencies involved in the overall process, and we'll be working closely with them as we go through this. But the Department of Commerce part is setting updating that new emissions rate. So I look forward to your help as in putting this together. It's something that is, pretty technical in terms of the work. And so having expertise from people who are actually buying and selling these power plants will be most appreciated. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Glenn. So we'll go ahead and I'll give an overview of the agenda today. We started with the introductions purpose of the meeting, and we will go over a review of the revised Code of Washington. And then we'll also go over the administrative rules that the Department of Commerce is responsible for. Also discuss the role of the stakeholder and technical subgroup, and we'll give you a preview of the emissions performance standard calculator and what the previous one looked like. And we'll also give you a timeline of the rulemaking, and we'll adjourn. And if you can hold questions until the end, that'd be great. If you want to type it in the chat, you can also do that, and then we can go over them at the end. If you have any quick clarifying questions, you can type that in the chat, and Austin will be monitoring. But otherwise, we'll try and save most of the questions until the end, just in case they get answered during the presentation. Thank you. All right. So we'll start off with a review of the RCW 80.80, and we'll go over the definitions, the survey of commercially available and purchased combined cycle combustion turbines, and a review of the greenhouse gas emissions performance standard review process. So starting off with section 10, here are some definitions. Combined cycle natural gas thermal electricity generation facility means a power plant that employs a combination of one or more gas turbines and steam turbines in which electricity is produced in the steam turbine from otherwise lost waste heat exiting from one or more of the gas turbines. Baseload electric generation means electric generation from a power plant that is designed and intended to provide electricity and an annualized plant capacity factor of at least 60%. And so what this rule will do is that it will apply an emissions performance standard to baseload electric generation, but it is based on a survey of combined cycle natural gas thermal electric generation facilities that are available and purchased in the US. So that's an important distinction to know about. An important note is that there may be a need for new fossil generation resources to provide intermediate load generation to balance intermittent and seasonal wind and solar generation, and to provide peak power generation to cover periods of high electrical demand. This new generating capacity is often provided by new simple cycle combustion turbines, frame type combustion turbines, or fast start combined cycle combustion turbines. And these simple cycle combustion turbines typically operate at a lower efficiency and thus emit more emissions of greenhouse gas per megawatt hour. And so these plants are designed and intended to operate at less than baseload rates, and this law does not apply to these types of plants. So that's why the definitions are important there. And here, RCW section 50 of chapter 80.80 talks about the survey and the responsibilities of the Department of Commerce. It says that the Energy Policy Division of the Department of Commerce shall provide an opportunity for interested parties to comment on the development of a survey of new combined cycle natural gas thermal electric generation turbines commercially available and offered for sale by manufacturers and purchased in the US to determine the average rate of emissions of greenhouse gases for these turbines. And the Department of Commerce shall report the results of the survey to the legislature every 5 years, beginning in June 30, 2013. And they'll adopt by rule the average available greenhouse gas emissions output every 5 years, beginning in 2007. A key word in the paragraph here is survey. So Commerce will initially interpreted the word to mean the entire analytical process undertaken, but realized it was helpful in communicating with stakeholders to present the analytical process as comprised of two separate parts. So the first part is the actual survey of combined cycle combustion turbines that utilities purchase and install within the previous 5 calendar years. And the second part is the series of calculations required to determine the average available greenhouse gas emissions output value. And this is referred to as the EPS calculator. And Commerce will determine the average rate of greenhouse gas emissions from these turbines. And that will serve as the basis for a new baseload electric generation EPS. So this ensures that utilities are using average or above average efficiency combustion turbines for baseload generation. And in section 80 of the law, it says that the Department of Ecology, in consultation with the Department of Commerce, the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, the Commission, and governing boards of consumer-owned utilities, shall review the greenhouse gas emissions performance standard established in this chapter to determine the need, applicability, and effectiveness every 5 years following July 22nd, 2007, or upon implementation of federal law or state law regulating carbon dioxide emissions of electric utilities. So the Department of Ecology is in the process of finalizing their most recent 5-year review of report at this moment. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And now we'll go over the rules that are in place for this. We'll review the current average available emissions output and the current impact on Northwest baseload electric generation plants. So here it says in the WAC for the Department of Commerce in the section relating to average available greenhouse gas emissions output that the Energy Policy Division of the Department of Commerce has surveyed the new combined cycle natural gas thermal electric generation turbines commercially available and offered for sale. And we determined it was 925 pounds per megawatt hour. This is the current rule that we have in place for the average rate of emissions of combined cycle combustion turbines in the US, and this was established in 2018. And so this serves as the emissions performance standard for baseload electric generation. And so here it is again, the current is 925 pounds per megawatt hour. And we wanted to see along different samples what the impact is on Northwest turbines. So the first bullet shows the average emissions rate from all 14 of the Northwest combined cycle combustion turbines. The second bullet highlights another subset comparison, which excludes the 2 highest emitting combustion turbines in the Pacific Northwest. And the last comparison shows the average emissions output of just the newer combined combustion turbines. And so this graph compares the calculated greenhouse gas emissions to those reported to federal agencies. As you can see, the reported emissions are consistently estimated to be lower than the calculated emissions using the EPS calculator methodology. And this graph shows the difference between the 2013 and the 2018 EPS. So here you can see is the 2013 EPS, which was at 970 pounds per megawatt hour. And then in 2018, it was reduced to 925 pounds per megawatt hour. This graph shows that most of the Northwest baseload generation turbines were below the national average emissions output for both the 2013 and 2018, with those 2 outliers for the most largest emitting plants. And so now I'll talk about the stakeholder and technical subgroup process, and we'll discuss the purpose and duties of each group. So for the first one, the stakeholder group meetings in the future will be informational meetings open to all, similar to this one, where stakeholders who are interested in the emissions performance standard subject can join the listserv and be informed about updates and the process of the emissions performance standard. But you don't have to commit to any further duties or responsibilities. You would just be given updates on the process of the rulemaking and progress. And we could also use the help of an emissions performance standard technical subgroup. And we've used this in the past to inform the development of the EPS calculator. And for practical reasons, we'd prefer to limit this group in size. And so this technical group will be more deeply involved in the average available greenhouse gas output and will be composed of 1 to 2 representatives from utilities or entities who own or operate these combined cycle combustion turbines, major environmental or energy efficiency organizations, major state agencies. And the objective will be to hold three or more meetings with some homework in between to help the development of the calculator. We'll have email distribution of draft materials for review and comments. So if you know someone within your organization who has technical expertise on the operations or emissions of natural gas turbines or baseload electric generation that is powered by fossil fuels, uh, you can keep that in mind, and we'll seek out we'll reach out and ask for members to join that group to help with the establishment of the calculator. And some of the topics that this subgroup would talk about would discuss the CCTs, the combined cycle combustion turbines that would be included and excluded from the survey. So for instance, for the 2017 survey, we focused primarily on combined combustion turbines of a 1-by-1 architecture. So that's one combustion turbine followed by one steam turbine, as this is the primary format used in the Northwest. And the second part is the assumptions that go into the EPS calculator. Things like gross to net. So this refers to on-site parasitic losses to run equipment, and other things such as the CCT capacity factor, duct firing percentage, duct firing hours and rate, performance degradation due to aging, as well as adjustment factors to accommodate for stop and start cycling and cooling technologies, operating conditions, climate, etc. So we would develop the CCT based on these above factors. And I'll give you a look into what the EPS survey and calculator looks like and review the process and methodology. So here's a look at the survey portion of the 2012 to 2017 US CCT installations. This is an example survey here, and you can see that three major manufacturers are General Electric, Siemens, and Mitsubishi, and their plants are sold in the US and broken down by category. The last row and column compares the larger sample to a smaller representative subsample that is used for the EPS calculator. So we have the larger survey of all of the plants that were purchased in the US between 2012 and 2017. And then we narrow that down into a subsample that we can see is still representative of these plants and then is put into that calculator. And this just shows what the EPS calculator looks like, taking a representative sample of those plants from the survey. As you can see, a number of adjustments and calculations are made to arrive to the fully adjusted emissions rate. The process starts with determining the final adjusted heat rate for all CCT configurations. And then that heat rate is multiplied by the natural gas emissions factor to arrive at an emissions rate of pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour for all CCTs. And we also add standard values for methane and nitrous oxide emissions based on the Department of Ecology recommendations. And so the average emissions output becomes the basis for the updated emissions performance standard. So that's what we arrive to at the end. So now we'll give you a timeline of this rulemaking. So in February, here we'll have the notice of the initial intent of the CR 101. In March, we'll have a first stakeholder meeting, which will be very similar to this one. If there are other groups that you think would be interested or should be involved in this process, please reach out to them. And then we can also catch them up on the EPS and the relevant rules and give a similar presentation to this one. So they're caught up on the understanding of what this rulemaking means, and if they're interested in joining the technical subgroup, or if you know folks, you can start thinking about that. And then in April through June, Commerce will design the EPS survey and calculate in collaboration with stakeholders in the technical subgroup. And May and June, we'll have the second stakeholder meeting to update the public on progress, and we'll have the publication of the draft rule of the draft CR 102. And then in June and July, we'll have 2 public meetings to receive comments from interested parties on the rule. In August, after receiving the comments, we'll revise and finalize and publish the final rule, the CR 103. And then September through October, the rule will be entered into force, and then we'll report to the final result of the rulemaking to the legislature. Alrighty, so I'll go ahead and answer questions. I know it's a very technical subject. And if you have questions afterwards that you can't think of immediately, you can also save that for later. But I'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. So. Alrighty, I see a hand raised. Jessica, go ahead.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you. Jessica Zana, Puget Sound Energy. Would you please flip back to the kind of next steps slide? Just leave that up for a minute.
Yeah, the timeline slide.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
No questions. I just wanted to capture the information. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Alrighty, I see Ahmed asked, does the EPS consider duck firing? Yes, it does. And so that's part of the adjustments that I talked about that will be considered in the calculator. There are a number of assumptions that are made about duck firing. And so we would definitely appreciate the input from stakeholders on the assumptions there, because those assumptions have differed from the 2013 rulemaking versus the 2018 rulemaking. So those have changed over time. And so those are definitely, that's definitely a critical piece to discuss with stakeholders. And while we're waiting for other folks to think of questions, I'll have Austin post in the chat the sign up sheet for Smartsheet. If your organization is interested, or other folks in your organization are interested, they can join the email listserv. So they can keep up to date on the progress of this rulemaking. Thanks, Austin.
And I'm also going to post in the chat a link to our webpage where we will post the Zoom information. We'll post a slide deck on the webpage after today's webinar, so it will be available for folks to go back and visit. We'll also be making announcements about this work in our regular Clean Energy Transformation Act bulletin, which you can sign up for on our Clean Energy Transformation Act webpage. But this mailing list is a faster way for us to reach folks who are particularly interested in this topic, and we can convey a little bit more information that way than through our regular bulletin. And the recording of this workshop will also be posted on our webpage, so you can share that with folks. Well, Aaron, it seems that we've presented a technical conversation to folks, and they have no questions at this time, but we'll be looking. Oh, and as I say it, we get a question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe it was just a thumbs up. A celebration clap.
Okay.
Multiple emotions right now for folks. So I think
Alrighty.
you can close us out, Aaron.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for attending today. If you have any further questions, you can email me at aaron.tam@commerce.wa.gov. And I can take those questions. And again, if you're interested in joining the listserv, the smart sheet to sign up is there in the chat. And thank you guys for joining today. And we'll go ahead and close this out. Thank you. Take care all.
Thanks, everybody.
There you go.